The next and final exercise for Bootstrap is endangered animals. So this website about endangered species needs an update now that you know Bootstrap. First, create a div with the class container. This is the first step in any Bootstrap page, and it's what makes web pages responsive. Inside of the container, we're going to have a Jumbotron for the header here, endangered animals. And then under the Jumbotron, we want to put the animals inside of a single row, and then each animal is going to get 4 columns using the rule with SM in it. Lastly, we're going to put the picture attributes down at the bottom in their own row, taking up all 12 columns with the class footer. And then there's a bonus, put a background picture on the Jumbotron. We may need to change the font color to make sure the title is visible against the background. Okay, let's get started. So when we run this initially, this is what we're starting with. There is an endangered animals heading, and then there are 3 endangered animals, each with an image and some information. So we have a bear, a rat, and a prairie dog. We want to basically put each of these animals in its own section, and we want all 3 sections to go across one row. So we'll do that using our Bootstrap knowledge. Finally, we'll take these picture attributes, which is just the sources of where the images came from, and we'll put it in its own row, taking up all 12 columns, so it'll go all the way across, and that will be the footer of our web page. So let's start by going into the body, and first thing we want to do is create that div with the class equal to content, or sorry, container. This is going to be the div tag that you need to start any Bootstrap page, and it's essentially what makes a web page responsive or a Bootstrap page responsive. So that is step 1. Next, we can take the header and wrap it in its own div tag with the class equal to Jumbotron. This will put it in its own section and kind of call out to it, which will make it nice and large. So if we refresh our web page, this is what we should have so far. Notice that the container class gives it these nice margins on the left and the right, and the Jumbotron puts it in its own nice big box at the top and enlarges it. So later we'll come back to that Jumbotron and add an image. But for now, let's work on the 3 main sections below. So to create that row, we need a div tag with the class equal to row. And then we're going to put the closing div tag at the end of the animals, which will be the last image here of the prairie dog. So that will be, or that will signify our row. And to create the sections within the row, we are going to use another div tag. So the first section is going to be the bear, the second section will be the rat, and the third the prairie dog. So we'll do each div around those animals. So the first one for the bear, I'm going to go right here and create a div tag with the class equal to call. And remember, we want to do it with the SM this time, which is small. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. And we're going to say it's going to take up 4 columns. Remember that our Bootstrap grid is made up of 12 columns going across, and we can organize our content using those 12 columns. Since we have 3 animals, we're taking 12, dividing it by 3, and that's how we're arriving at 4 columns for each animal. So we're going to take that closing div tag for class equals call SM4 and put it at the bottom or under the bear image. We'll do the same thing for the other 2 animals. So for the rat, we will do a div with the class equal to call SM4 and take that closing div tag and put it under the rat image. Okay, finally for the prairie dog, we'll also put it in its own section of 4 columns. So class equals call SM4 and the closing div tag under the image. Okay, so let's save this and let's refresh our page and see what we have. Okay, Beautiful. So now each animal has its own section and a lot easier to digest this because it's all in one row versus scrolling up and down. So the SM stands for small. This would be for small devices like a mobile phone. Since we're using SM, this layout would apply to small devices and anything larger. So medium devices like a tablet or desktop and or large devices like a TV monitor, for example. So SM applies to small, medium, and large devices. This would be the layout that we see. Anything smaller than a small device, like an extra small, that would revert back to the vertical stacking layout that we saw before. So this takes care of our main content. Our last main goal is working on this footer row. So we're going to take those picture attributes and just like we did above, we're going to put it in its own row with class equal to row. And we'll take the closing div tag and we'll put it underneath the last paragraph here. Now we also want to give this div the class of footer. We will do that in its own class equal to call SM12 since it's taking up 12 rows, and we will also give it the footer class. And we will take that closing, sorry, they should all be in one set of quotes, and then we'll take that closing div tag for the column SM4 and put it underneath the paragraph. So let's go ahead and save and refresh. And there we go. Our picture attributes are now down at the bottom. They take up the entire 12 columns. And that, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up this exercise with the exception of the bonus. So for the bonus, we want to add in a background image on this Jumbotron, just giving it a little bit more visual interest. I went ahead and looked up some images that would fit and found this one that might work well. This is the publicdomainpictures.net, and this image is Jungle by George Hoden. I'm going to copy the image address and I'm going to go over to my CSS, which hopefully is set up. There it goes. And I'm going to add that in to the Jumbotron class. So since there isn't a rule for that, I'm going to go ahead and add in a Jumbotron rule and set the background image property to that URL. So remember the syntax is just URL, and then in quotes, you want to put in the image address. If it doesn't work well with the color, we may need to change the font color. So let's see what that does. Oops. Refresh. Okay, so this image works well, but that gray font definitely gets lost in the image. So I want to grab that H1 and give it a different background color. So I will create a separate rule for this. Jumbotron H1, and the color of white might work well here. So let's save this. Let's refresh this web page, and there we go. A lot better contrast, and that jungle background image works beautifully, but you can use any image that you think fits well. This, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up our lesson 4 on grid systems. Any question on this, leave it below, and I will see you on lesson 5. Very nice job so far. We are more than halfway through Bootstrap.